Spanning back to the 1990 NBA season, the Indiana Pacers have made the NBA postseason 25 of a possible 31 times. Now, to put this feat into perspective, since the 1990 season, 7 teams have won multiple NBA championships. Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls, of course, the Detroit Pistons, the San Antonio Spurs, the Los Angeles Lakers, the Houston Rockets, the Golden State Warriors, and the Miami Heat. Of those 7 teams that have won multiple championships, only the San Antonio Spurs have appeared in more playoff series than the Indiana Pacers, achieving an incredible 28 of 31, accounting for this year as the first time they have missed the playoffs in over 2 decades. Now, for some more added perspective, the Lakers, Rockets, and Heat have all had over 20 appearances in the last 30 years, with the Lakers leading the best of the rest at 23, still 2 behind the Pacers, while Chicago, Detroit, and Golden State trail behind with a respective 19, 17, and 11. Over the course of 40 years, only 4 teams have won an NBA championship that were not led or heavily influenced by a top 5 overall pick, who was either drafted by the team or acquired by the team in free agency, such as Shaquille O'Neal, Kevin Durant, Kevin Garnett, LeBron James, and Pau Gasol, who did not lead the team but was clearly the second best player. Those teams that were able to achieve the ultimate goal without a heavy influence from a top 5 pick are the 2004 Detroit Pistons, who you could argue don't fit the criteria because of Darko Milicic, the 2011 Mavericks, the 2015 Warriors, and last year's champions, the Toronto Raptors. Of those 4 teams, the Raptors and Pistons are the only team to have not been led by a top 10 overall pick, with Golden State boasting Stephen Curry and the Dallas Mavericks boasting Dirk Nowitzki. If we were to dive even deeper, we could discount the Pistons because of their selection of Darko Milicic, and despite him having no impact, that's their fault. Pistons fan, by the way. And to continue to dive deeper, we would find that the Raptors traded 2 number 9 overall picks in order to acquire Kawhi Leonard, who was the driving force behind them winning the 2019 finals, alongside a group of great players, coaching and management. Now, why is this important? Over the course of 31 years, the Pacers have only finished an NBA season below 400 on 1 occasion, with that being the 2009-10 season, in which they won 32 games and had a winning percentage of 39%. As a result of that season, the Pacers were able to draft Paul George with the 10th overall pick, which was their first top 10 selection in 14 years, with their last top 10 selection prior to PG being Eric Damper in 1996, who was also selected with the number 10 overall pick. And over that period of time, no team has won an NBA Finals without a significant presence from a player drafted higher than the 10th overall pick, which they were able to acquire through free agency or the draft, except for the Raptors and Pistons, who you could argue against for my previous points. And this begs the question, one that NBA fans have been contemplating for years now. Do you need to lose in order to win? Now, the Raptors have been the focal point of an argument suggesting that you can win through smart acquisitions and a winning culture. And despite acquiring Kawhi Leonard at the expense of 2 top 10 overall picks, they did do an incredible job at building a team through clever drafting and incredible acquisitions to go along with great development from the G League, great coaching, a number of things that just culminated into a great championship roster. The 2004 Pistons were another team to do this, as they built a championship winning team through incredible pickups as well, acquiring huge pieces in Rip Hamilton, Rasheed Wallace, Ben Wallace, and Chauncey Billups, as well as drafting Tayshaun Prince late in the first round, before eventually winning the 2004 finals. And we can't leave off the Warriors or Mavericks, who also did incredible jobs at drafting and acquiring talent. So giving each of these teams the benefit of the doubt, that makes up 4 of the last 40 championships won by teams who weren't led or significantly helped by a player drafted in the top 5 overall, an incredible 10%. Now, seeing as Indiana has been the NBA's most consistently good team, yes, the Spurs have been incredible, and their peaks have been much higher and stayed for longer, but they did drop to 20 wins on 2 occasions, allowing them to select Tim Duncan and David Robertson with the first overall pick on both occasions and build a dynasty, something the Pacers haven't done. Not talking about the dynasty, well, that as well, but the picks, basically. The tanking, something the Pacers haven't done. So seeing as the Pacers have been the epitome of consistency, what team would be a better case study to try and understand what it is like to win in the NBA without losing significantly? So over the last 20 20 years, the Pacers have finished with more than 55 wins on 4 occasions. Very impressive. But what was the ultimate reason that they were unable to capitalize on their regular season success in the postseason? Now let's start by taking it back to 2004. The Pacers have their best regular season ever, in which they win 61 games and finish first in the Eastern Conference. This is following the firing of Isaiah Thomas and the acquisition of Rick Carlisle. As a result, the Pacers excel on the back of an incredible and extremely underrated forward pairing of Ron Artest and Jermaine O'Neal. O'Neal would have an unbelievable season, averaging 20 and 10 to go along with over 2.5 blocks, finishing third in MVP voting, only behind Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett. Artest would have a season that was almost just as impressive, winning Defensive Player of the Year honors as the pair anchored the 3rd best defense in the league, conceding only 1 more point per game on average than the Spurs, who were anchored by one of the greatest defenders ever, Tim Duncan, and the 2004 Pistons, who were considered one of the greatest defensive teams of all time, also anchored by one of the greatest defenders of all time in Ben Wallace. Now, following a sweep against Boston and a series win against the Heat, the Pacers were matched up against the Detroit Pistons, a defensive monster that allowed very little from their opponents, and the Pistons, which would make for a great series. I'm a Pistons fan, so I can say that. The series between the Pacers and Pistons was incredibly tight, and far closer than the final series that followed it, suggesting that had the Pacers been able to beat the Pistons, they may have been able to go on and do the same to the Lakers. But let's not get carried away. 4 of the 6 games between the Pacers and Pistons were separated by 7 or less points, with each team having a respective blowout in Game 4 and 5. But throughout these 6 games, there were 2 notable plays that pretty much separated the 2 teams over the course of this series. May 24th, 2004, with Indiana trailing by 2 points with 20 seconds left in Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals, Chauncey Billups is stripped of the ball, leading to a fast break that is a certain Reggie Miller layup. When out of absolutely nowhere, Tayshaun Prince makes a block that is probably only second to the one made by LeBron James in the finals, which not only prevented Indiana scoring and tying the game, but resulted in Detroit getting the ball and going on to seal the game. Now fast forward to Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Indiana, having led throughout the whole game, had just been tied up by Detroit at 59 apiece, before Ron Artest committed a flagrant foul on Rip Hamilton, which gave the Pistons 2 free throws and possession of the ball, in which they scored 4 consecutive points, which were ultimately the difference in a 65-69 game. Now, these 2 plays were potentially the difference between the Pacers exiting the Eastern Conference Finals in 6 games and them having a very good shot at winning a title in 2004. Now let's take it back to 2000. Following conference finals appearances in 4 of 6 seasons, unfortunately for Pacers fans, all 4 of those appearances would just be that, because they would fail to win any of the series prior to 2000. The Pacers would finally break through and make the NBA Finals following a 6-game series win over the New York Knicks. Now this is where we see the impact of a number 1 overall pick take shape, and this was in the form of Shaquille O'Neal. After the Lakers signed Shaq with their money and big market appeal, Shaq led the Lakers to a 67-15 season in which Shaquille O'Neal was the league MVP and most dominant player in basketball, and he did more than carry that form over into the playoffs and particularly the final against the Pacers. Despite yet another great season from the Pacers, led by a 34-year-old Reggie Miller, most improved Jalen Rose, and a very reliable playmaker in Mark Jackson to go along with a nice squad, the Pacers had been matched up against a serious force. And no, it wasn't the Lakers, it was Shaquille O'Neal. Despite the dominance of Shaq, the Pacers were far from a walkover, and following a Game 3 win, the Pacers had a chance to level the series at 2 apiece. 120-118, overtime of Game 4 in the 2000 NBA Finals. The Pacers get the ball in the hands of Reggie Miller, with a few seconds left on the clock. He gets off a heavily contested, but semi-good look if you know what I'm saying, considering his credentials, that falls just inches short of tying the series at 2 games apiece. Inches away from tying the series at 2-all, the Pacers go into LA and force the series to go to 6 after blowing out the Lakers. But on the back of a 41-point game by Shaq, the Lakers defeat the Pacers and the Pacers fall short yet again, with a few crucial plays the difference between defeat and glory. Now there are 2 more series that I would like to look at. The first we don't have to go into too much detail about. It's the 1997-98 series in which the Pacers fell agonizingly short of beating the Chicago Bulls, led by, you guessed it, 2 top 5 overall picks in Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. Now, at risk of sounding like a hypocrite, I acknowledge that the Pacers did have the number 2 overall draft pick from 1988, Rick Smits, in their squad, who was a very important piece, but was drafted before 1990, which was the criteria I set. But anyways, let's move on. This series doesn't need too much discussion, because if you are watching this video, you more than likely saw the Last Dance documentary and know what happened. But in case you didn't, let's give a quick recap. After squandering a chance to take a series lead in Game 1, the Pacers lost another close one in Game 2. Trailing 2-0, the Pacers won back-to-back games and leveled the series up. The teams then traded game for game before Jordan was faced with only the second Game 7 of his career, in which the Pacers got off to an incredible 20-7 start. But the Pacers' lack of rebounding was the reason they would lose the game. It was just that simple. The Bulls scored 20 plus points from second chance opportunities in comparison to the Pacers' 3 points. And like we have seen before, the Pacers pushed the team that eventually won the championship. Begging that same question, would it have been a Pacers championship had a few things gone differently? The 2012-13 NBA season. Now, this wasn't one of Indiana's best regular seasons, but it was another series in which they fell agonizingly short of defeating a team that was stacked with talent who were the eventual champions. Following the emergence of PG-13, in addition to good seasons from David West and George Hill, alongside contributions from Roy Hibbert and Lance Stevenson, among other role players, the Pacers fell 1 win short of a 50-win season, as they finished 3rd in the Eastern Conference with a record of 49-32. Now, a strong team display saw the Pacers beat the Hawks in 6 to advance past the first round and match up against Melo and the Knicks. Following the series win over Atlanta, Paul George led the way for the Pacers yet again. PG-13 led the way for the Pacers yet again versus the Knicks from a scoring base, averaging over 19 points per game. But it was the incredible team display that saw the Pacers prevail over the Knicks, with their starters all remarkably averaging over 11 points per game. Following that series win, the Pacers were faced with LeBron James and a Miami Heat team that finished the season with by far and away the best record in the East and the best record in the whole NBA with 66 wins. LeBron and the Heat would roll through the first 2 rounds, only losing 1 game before coming up against the massive underdogs in Indiana, a tag that should just be associated with the whole franchise by now. Game 1 of the conference finals saw a huge 3 by PG send the game to OT, with the Pacers leading 102-101 with only seconds left in the game in overtime. The Pacers gave LeBron a lane and he took full advantage, winning the game on a layup that was barely contested, giving the Heat the 1-0 series lead, which would come back to haunt the Pacers. Spoiler alert. A hard-fought Game 2 saw the Pacers prevail and level the series at 1 apiece, before heading back to an ecstatic home Indiana crowd. Now, the Heat took the energy out of the crowd early in Game 3 as they put up a massive 70 points in the first half, before taking a 2-1 series lead. But as the Pacers have done throughout all of time, they continued to fight and won 2 of the next 3 games, leveling up the series before playing a Game 7 decider in Miami. After taking an early lead and being neck and neck with the Heat for the first quarter and a half, the Heat took control and finished the half very strong, holding a commanding double-digit lead that just could not be topped by the Pacers, who ultimately had no answer for LeBron James in this game, or any of the games throughout the series for that matter. This was another occasion in which a combination of superstar talent and close calls saw the Pacers fall short yet again. And you guessed it, following the series loss to the heavily favoured Heat, the Heat would go on to win it all, begging that same question. This video details the troubles of a franchise that has been built through astute and clever moves on numerous occasions, coming up as underdogs against the sheer talent of other teams such as the Bulls, the Lakers, and the Heat, with the Pistons being an outlier, but still an important team to note considering how close that series was. The Pacers and their missed opportunities ultimately cost them chances to win championships, but the formation of the teams that they faced were built around generational talents drafted to those respective franchises or acquired through free agency, something that a small market team such as Indiana struggles to do, despite being the most consistent franchise of the last 30 years, which doesn't look like changing anytime soon. But with the inability to make huge free agency acquisitions, do the Pacers need to look at another avenue as a means of acquiring the next generational talent to lead their team to a championship? Because as I've detailed, without a top selection in the draft or an ability to pull a big free agent, the odds are stacked against your franchise. Hope you enjoyed the video. It's crazy to think that the Pacers have come so close to winning the championship, yet still remain ringless. I had high hopes for them coming into this season as well, with Oladipo, Brogdon, Sabonis and Turner making up a very strong core to go along with the great rotation. But based off what we saw prior to the season coming to a halt, it didn't look like we were going to see the best out of all those players at the right time. But here's hoping that happens. Also, this video is more detailed at how the Pacers failed to get over the hurdle, but I would also love to do a sequel on all the moves they have made to stay good for so long, because their ability to stay good despite not being able to draw big free agents and not having top 5 overall picks has been incredible. So if you guys would like to see that video, let me know. Other than that, have a good one.